Yo.
Hey.
How's it going?
Hello.
I'm gonna die.
Please don't die.
We thought was in the other building.
So we get to LA,
And then
LA
20 minute mark, we're like,
5,
what the fuck?
and if
So
someone's
we just
office,
ran
then we're
over
like, this isn't right.
here. We just ran over
So you're just
here.
like, thank God challenge judging, because there's no way we'll be later than him.
Sure, it was afterwards. I think in the moment we were just like, well, we have to run.
With me, you never have to run.
I know that's the future.
Well, someone's sitting outside when we went up the stairs.
Yeah, I know.
And are you cool with us recording around, you know, how many problems?
Yeah, that's
this is?
As long as you all have some kind of agreement about what happens with it going online or whatever.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
As
won't.
long as you
Not
all are on
online,
the same
send it out.
page, then I don't give a shit at all.
Awesome.
How do you like flying on a surface?
It's awesome.
Yeah?
Yes. Okay, my template is up, so
Good.
ready when y'all are.
Good? Plan, the United States federal government to substantially increase federal control over state regulation of gambling on Indian country by banning the state regulation of gaming on Indian country. By banning the state regulation of gaming on Indian country. Questions?
Thanks. Not really.
Status is unconditional.
Okay.
Advantage 1 is environmental racism. Unity warns the status quo attempt to control native gambling operations is little more than disguised economic racism. While the matter is just a question of U.S. economic elites, it is more than that for indigenous persons. Little later point under this, the Keith Slackey, an off-the-grid cultural survivor, argues that gaming operations become a new form of sovereignty for native individuals because state regulation comes in stark opposition to this end. Native gambling laws allows them to exercise some inherent form of power over themselves and self-determination over their own lands. The piece of point is that tribes see recognition. Tribes see regulations as a recolonization of the individuals. It is a re-entrenchment of the 1987 Supreme Court case, California versus the Cabanza Bond of Mission Indians, in which it was established that states could states could regulate gambling that happened on Indian country, despite years of precedent in the contrary. The piece of point of this then led into the IGRA, which is the Indian Gambling Regulation Act, which established the harsh regulations. This is in strict opposition to many other sectors, but rather it's just a way that elites are able to control and manipulate the economies of native lands. The true argument is the states are moving to restrict right now. A little later this is that it's a vestige of colonial structures in the United States where states have their ability to control what happens on native lands is just a form of their own sovereignty, meaning that it sets up a sort of double consciousness whereby indigenous persons cannot participate in the process for the state, but the state can participate in the sovereign and governing process of the individuals. The piece of point is that this leads to a new form of neocolonialism where we are able to entrench our identity and overdetermine the other implications. One is that the first impact is neocolonialism is the logic of disposability. A little under this is that neocolonialism is the belief that you can impose or override control another country. Little b put under this is makes things like violence and wars of exploitation inevitable because this is the mentality that you must override or occupy another individual space. The true argument is to reverse structural impacts. A little under this is that crisis politics are bad because they lend us to politics of a constantly being under threat or justify things like drone strikes and continual systemic violence under the threat of one large-scale impact. This causes all the worst forms of it. This causes more violence than any nuclear war possibly could. See that old hypothetical policy card where we talks about how more people die every 6 years than in a massive nuclear war. The piece of point is that the structural problems can mean the larger problems because structural systemic problems that exist in the real world allow us to come to understanding with our own lives and our own terminology because oppression is like a cage. There are many strands to it and we must focus down on an individual one. This is why pragmatic solutions and representations are key. The piece of point is peace positivism, understanding how structural violence affects individuals allows us to change society to understand what a positive piece is. The third argument is the solvency one of the plan solves the land of this that it's removal of U.S. states from the governing process for indigenous bodies, meaning that we are forced to recognize that the sovereignty of Indian country is a real thing. The piece of point is this is an actualization of harms that have been caused by United States and a reversal of the previously mentioned court case and the IGRA, meaning that we have changed the way that we approach the regulation of Indian country and sets a precedent for future deregulation of native lands. The piece of point is the pragmatism of good pragmatism is how we gain insight to a larger social structure. We would love people to talk about every form of oppression. However, the problem is that we have a very limited time space in a single debate round. We will argue that our method is not an opportunity cost to any other method, but rather just an actualization of one form of oppression that has been realized on the topic. The two argue that's it.
2 off. Are any of them case?
One's K.
One's a K, yeah. Thank you. Oh, what is this? Seriously. So 2 off, and then case. I'm going to be going in order, else I post where I start. Is anyone not ready? First is the counterplan. The United States federal government should substantially increase federal control over state regulation of gaming on Native American territories. USFG should substantially increase federal control over state regulation of gaming on Native American territories. If A is the competition, first this is actually competitive. You can't pair it because we affect Native American reservations instead of the affirmative subject. Second is this is functionally competitive because you can't pass a plan with both labels. Third is that you can't sever your rhetoric. Your rhetorical impact has already happened. You can't justify using a racial slur by apologizing. B is the solvency. First is this also 100% of the affirmative because there's no net benefit to using the rhetoric of the PMC. Second is that Native American casinos would be much more likely to comply with the affirmative if you aren't deliberately racist in the offer. C is the net benefit. First is the phrase Indian has historically been used to oppress Native American cultures. It's based on racist assumptions that since they were brown that they must be Indians, and that homogenizes all of non-white oppression. Second is that Native American tribes have strongly rejected use of the term Indian. Tribes such as the Inuit, Inuit, Alouette, conditional, have all criticized the term as being racist and have said it's historically been used by the government to enact violence against them. They had policies in the 19th century to remove the Indian from the Indians, which predicated itself on civilizing people to better fit society. Third is using the term Indian posits the individual as a different being that is less valuable than those in power. It justifies atrocities against difference. Fourth is that rhetoric shapes reality. The way we talk about issues shapes the way that we view them, and fifth is that the counterclaim solves this through net benefit. The 1995 census shows that a majority of Native Americans prefer the term Native American to the term Indian. Next is the criticism. A is the framework. Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Considering the textuality of your counterplan text, how does that interact with the IGRA?
Okay, actually, can we just change the counter text to the what you said, Native American territories, by banning state regulation on gaming?
Yeah, we're banning, the text is United States
So
federal
can we get a
government
copy of
shall.
that since it's changed now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
So
sorry.
that still doesn't answer my question.
Read it again.
Okay, so that can you, I don't have the thing.
Yeah, USFG
The
should
United States federal
increase
government should substantially
federal control
over state regulation of gaming on Native American territories by banning the state regulation of gaming on gambling on Native American territories. Gaming, yeah, sorry. So it's the plan, but we say Native American territories. That's the point of the count plan. And we'll get you a text of it.
Need a text of it? Yes, please.
Okay. Next is the criticism. A is the framework. First, the role of the ballot is to endorse the team that best interrogates our relationship with capital. The role of the ballot is to endorse the team that best interrogates our relationship with capital. Second is the PMC is only a speech act. Nothing that's advocated within the debate space by the affirmative will actually happen. Congress won't suddenly be moved to do something because you vote for the affirmative, meaning that the criticism is a prior question to the affirmative impacts. Third is that this is especially important for education because capitalism informs everything that we do. And so in order for us to actually learn, we need to interrogate why we think the way we do. Fourth is that we need to talk, they can still talk about the affirmative, but they have to justify the representations, and the criticism is a prior question to that. Fear the links versus the affirmative conflates the political with the economic because their ideological justification for the PMC is an economic change mediated by the political, which reinforces the notion that capitalism inherently structures the sphere of politics and attempts to reform, that reform of this will fail. So they're obviously doing things what capitalist means, right? Because the reason why we want to be going in and encroaching on Native American territories would be to be more productive or to make more money and things like that. Second is that the PMC's engagement with liberal strategies to reform capitalism represents wishful fantasy of snatching power away from the capitalist system. This prevents reform and inverts itself and becomes an enjoyment of the human mind, wherein we love the small steps we take to combat capitalism, and thus we love the oppression that exists. For that, we cannot make more reforms. This makes capitalism inevitable. Next are the impacts versus the death drive, the fantasy of the status quo, that we can conquer and defeat any and all violence or disorder is the desire of capitalism to overcome our psychic death drive. Desires to overcome death produce endless cycles of error replication because we don't aim at the direct source of disorder. This causes our death drive to manifest itself in all manners of contemporary violence. This makes the push to eliminate the other inevitable. Second is that ethics are impossible under systems of capitalism. It sustains itself by pointing out and thriving off of difference. We do this to seek superiority and create hierarchies. This destroys all value life and turns the affirmative because it is impossible to be ethical. It is possible to be ethical under a system of capitalism, and ethical questions are have to be evaluated post-capitalism. They're obviously this is obviously a big deal because at the point that they are pointing out the difference of another culture, this is clearly showing how the impacts of the criticisms are happening. Next is the alternative. Vote negative to withdraw ideological support from capitalism. Vote negative to withdraw ideological support from capitalism.
Can we get a copy of status?
Yeah, conditional, yeah, and we'll get a copy. First, the capitalism maintains its dominance by creating conflicts between ideologically opposed groups. This allows us to mask the true problems, and they cannot fix the system within the system of capitalism, because as long as we are in the system of capitalism, it will tell us that it is good, so it's not going to be properly fixed. So second, the only way to combat capitalism is to withdraw any discussion between competing ideologies allows for capitalism to usurp the opposition. Third is that there are no permutation, because we need a 100% withdrawal of support from capitalism. If we win one link, then the perm never solves. And to do this would be severance. Don't allow them to do that because it makes it a moving target. It's bad for competitive equity and things like that. So fourth is that the round is a question of non-commutable starting points. Don't let them sever the justifications that they use in the PMC.
Zero points bad.
So on the PMC. On the advantage, so on B, they talk about how tribes see this as a recolonization of their territories, but the entire reason behind this, the entire ideology behind this, is because people are trying to take over these Native American territories in order to try and be profitable, to gain money, to make it productive, right? The reason why these atrocities were committed against Native Americans in the first place was specifically because people thought that they could take this land, they could make it profitable, and then they could create a hierarchy because they thought that they were better than anyone who had brown skin, right? So because of that, that's the reason why all these bad things are happening. They're not addressing the root cause. This explicitly links to the criticism because we tell you that capitalism attempts to mask the true problems, and we come to love the tiny steps that we take to combat capitalism. Thus, we love the oppression that it creates. This is a clear representation of that. Also, they talk about in the next argument about how the IGRA made harsh regulations and it allowed the elites to be on top. The entire reason why hierarchies exist is because the ideology of capitalism and the way that our psychic death drive manifests itself and makes us want to continue to produce sameness, and because we are scared of difference, so we say that we are superior to any difference, and then we continue to create violence against that different person because of that. They're just masking the problem on their neo-colonialism point. I think it's B under another number. They say that this causes the logic of disposability. Absolutely not. The logic of disposability is based off of what should be productive, right? Also, disposability is based off of what you think can and cannot help you, right? If people are inherently self-interested and they see someone different than them, they have the psychic desire to protect themselves from that difference, and they're protecting themselves from that difference by saying, by labeling this other person as disposable or something like that. That is what creates all of this violence. That is the root cause of structural violence and systemic violence that happens in the status quo. They're just not going deep enough on psychological reasons why these bad things are happening. That's the criticism.
Okay, well, that's going to be case on top. One new walk. The counterpoint. The framework. The alternative, then the links and impacts.
The signpost will make it bigger than I like that.
Yes, yeah. So once again, for everyone, case and pop. The one new walk, counterpoint. Framework. The alternative, the links and impacts. Is everyone ready? We're voting for the affirmative team because our method is not competitive with their own. Go to the line by line. They say that we don't address the root cause. We have a couple responses. First of all, root cause analysis bad. We say that forms of oppression often cannot be singled out. The singular cause of all forms of oppression. This statement
economic racism is also an indictment of the cap, because it's only economic racism, it's like saying that it's an economic consideration masks the environmental racism about it.
Also to set the economic considerations away, just mask the environmental, the racism that exists in the status quo. We say things are capitalism because it affects white bodies at typically the same level as other large bodies. But the reality is that the intersection of capitalism with other forms of oppression causes those things to exist differently. All the reasons why you should reject the, hey, go on to the new off. Interpretation that negative is titled to one conditional advocacy of the status quo, then negative title one conditional advocacy status quo violation. There were two conditional advocacies on the status one why strategic investment was right. We say that why strategic investments when white persons only invested in combating forms of oppression when it's strategically beneficial to them, i.e. white persons and dominant views are within interactions with people willing to say, oh, racism is bad, but as soon as it's beneficial for them to say racist things in a job interview, they launch on the opportunity. We say running things conditionally is only it's the white strategic investment because you only want to things as long as are beneficial for you to win this battle. We say this causes all the impacts of both the critiques become inevitable because we only view things as we only run things when they're beneficial for our battle. The next argument is the UTT. We say the UTT only tests performance about the negative, but the negative has the LLC enables you to generate new pieces, essentially give them two speeches. We say the consequence of the UTT guarantees any officers with possible conditionality with constant changing unique scenario. 3 is education. We say that your form of education decreases, you cause in-depth education to decrease because you're no longer required to stick to your advocacy, which causes you to be, which causes you to only choose the thing that's, which causes you to only choose things that are the easiest way for you to the debate round of the voters. 1 is you have a debate game no longer is yourself, which means that you should be rejected. We say that it's no longer unified states to defend cooperation and building in the future. Second argument is that you should be listening to comedic interpretations because the last 4 decrease of judge intervention. It's not priori issues for the reasons specified in standards and fairness in education. What a counterpoint. The first argument is no solvency. A is that the individual we chose to run Indian person for a reason. We say that's a legal term. I.e. in the world we don't use this type of language. We never cause amendments to the IGRA, which means you can't solve the case because they can't actually cause legal reform because they don't recognize the word in the country. The visa point is a unique reason why to further permutation on this counterplan, to do the counterplan because 1, it is not mutually exclusive, even though we use different texts. Your competition comes to the net benefit, which will resolve. But also we say that shows how language is problematic and is used to overdetermine people, but we have to use problematic language in order to cause legal change. But that type of language is not necessarily the best language. The third argument is the Native American language is bad. It's true for a couple of reasons. A is causes essentialist view in our understanding of indigenous persons, where we view that they are the same. We are the same tribe. We look at hundreds of tribes in the United States. Because the Indian is recognition of the temporality of this form of oppression. We understand the way we conceptualize we feel justified in occupying and regulating these persons' lands because of the way the connotations of the indigenous persons. So our affirmative is uniquely situated to resolve your net benefits. The argument is indigenous persons who are calling for the advocacy from a time typically use this type of language for a reason. It's because it's the way the legal system recognizes this type of language. So across by our pragmatic solutions, we say as pragmatists we have to understand how we can actually create legal changes in the future. So using the proper language is probably good at the same sex of return is crossed by the right strategic investment. This means you can never solve your case. The argument is anything else on this? The framework. The first argument is counter-interpretation. The role of the ballot should be with the affirmative versus the negative. The role of the ballot should be with the affirmative versus the negative. The role of the status one is intersectionality. Cross-cutting analysis into the method that forms of oppression often exists on multiple intersections. Choosing individuals to prioritize some form method causes individuals to lie on the intersection to have to prioritize certain forms of oppression. The piece of points causing like women of color to never be taken into consideration. Your types of movements probably cause all the impacts of the critique to be inevitable because we never understand how women of color uniquely are situated in modes of capitalism, but also makes it unique reason to embrace the affirmative because our pragmatic solution. Next argument is the militarism. We say that your world is militaristic. What militarism is the need to construct a threat. It's the need to securitize against yourself, against the other beats. Your alternative, your role balance for militarism because you feel like you have to create your castle building a moat around you to prevent and securitize yourself against other forms of debate. Arguments sees the impacts. We must say militarism causes violence to be inevitable and also is a good indication why your role balance to be inevitable and maybe should be rejected. The third argument is because it's good a policy role playing good. We say that we have to understand how to resolve pragmatic resolve issues of oppression that we see, i.e. the state is going to be inevitable. The only thing we can do as the debaters in the round is understand how we resolve and relate to the state outside of this debate space, which is unique reason to embrace the affirmative. The fourth argument is that the death drive isn't real. We say that the more violent violence is actually we are experiencing the least amount of violence we have throughout history in the past 20 years. Probably good indication that we actually have a decreased drive towards the drive. Go to the alternative. The first argument is starting points are bad. A starting points were was radical conservatives used to reinforce whitewash history or more for this to be constantly used. The starting point of the United States is our history and our textbooks and viewpoints, and your starting point causes us to ignore how colonization and other forms of oppression existed prior to your starting point makes it so we can never look at the intersection. Next speeches sees the impacts one this causes us to mistake imagination for progress. We assume that just isolating problems and no longer isolating problems suddenly causes us to resolve those problems. We never take the interim steps of how we actually resolve those issues. Additionally causes nihilism because we never practice on how to create pragmatic change. We never think that we can resolve these issues. That means as active cells have the space, we can never resolve the issues that you've articulated. Next argument is turn is neoliberalism is what neoliberalism is. Its description is the lack of regulation of the market. No, scratch that. Okay. Next argument is turn is your instance of guilt absolution A. So guilt absolution is when you vote for something or embrace a methodology, suddenly you're good white liberal are no longer required to then the applicant no longer have to take action in the future to resolve those issues. It's just the pressure because your alternative results in this because the judge will suddenly be guilt absoluted in the world where he doesn't no longer be guilty because they go to links. The first argument is no link. A, so no link. We're not conflating the political with the personal. We are just saying that for these indigenous persons, the capitalist system functions differently. Next argument is turn is saying that next argument is turn is your capitalism privatization is privilege. A is that the necessity to privatize capitalism is a result of believing that capitalism is going to affect white bodies the same way as market bodies. It often says dispatch and decay.
Order is going to be the theory position, on the critique, case, counterpoint. Theory position, critique. The critique order is going to be the alt, framework, links, and effects. Case, counterpoint. Alt, framework, links, and effects. Yeah, alternative, framework, links, impacts.
Okay.
Is everyone good? Good. All right. On conduct, the counter-interpretation is the negative is two conditional advocacies in addition to the status quo, and the affirmative has racist rhetoric in the PMC and a flawed approach to solving that problem. The negative is two conditional advocacies in addition to the status quo, and the affirmative has racist rhetoric in the PMC and a flawed approach to solving that problem. And on the counter standards, first off, the counter standards is one education, reading multiple conditional advocacies, in this instance, is morally justified because it's key to test and explore why exactly the offensive rhetoric that you're highlighting in the PMC is bad and teach the affirmative. If you anything, the judge should teach the affirmative that rhetoric is bad by voting for us on this argument and allowing us to guard that offense and that test of the affirmative methodology. The second argument, second standard is predictability. It's totally predictable whenever you have offensive rhetoric in the resolution. You should have been prepared for a floating pig, but more specifically, you should have been prepared for a question of your methodology and the ideology that you're going about calling these Native American reservations Indians and just going by that and saying that the legal justice system justifies that. If anything, this is the first thing that we thought of coming out of prep. I believe it's the first thing Washburn thought of because y'all are pretty good at catching arguments like that. The third argument was this key to rhetoric check because this key to rhetoric check by running multiple conditionality because whenever we're allowed to check your methodology and the question by which you are framing an individual, we are key to check the rhetoric of the affirmative because it is the is a test of methodology, and the counter was a test of your moral choices, but also the racist rhetoric is the next standard because you cannot force us to you can't force us to just read one unconditional advocacy whenever you can have that racist rhetoric because it forces us to stand beside it. Having these multiple conditional advocacies allows us to approach different methodologies in which we can then approach the problem to try to find the best solution. But also on your standards, you say that first off the white person's oppression because the fact that we're just gonna read whatever is beneficial. No, you are completely mishandling the purpose of which we read these multiple conditional advocacies. We did not read these because necessarily we want to win the round, but it's a matter of you are trying to win the round by doing something that is inherently oppressive. That is bad. You can cross by the impacts that we have out of the counter plan that you completely mishandled. The second argument, though, you say is that the MG strategy skew. You had roughly 3 minutes given to the decay, and it was the last thing you addressed. I would argue that you had you were completely prepped for all these arguments. You've hit several of them before. I was just a matter of your MG was not skewed. You only read 1/3 position. I just don't see really any abuse in the round. You can kind of gut check them on that. On the voters, but also we are key to MG critical thinking because whenever you are allowed to multiple conditional advocacies, it forces the MG to think critically about the position that they are approaching and forces them to cherry pick the different types of arguments that they want coming out of the PMC and the MG and then into the PMR about the best way that they can fit into this and best way they can perm it. Whenever they don't really perm the counterplan, that leaves them is if anything a step away from that type of solvency to just try to subsume what the negative is saying. But on the voters, you say 1-0 sum because you say 0 sum because there's something to co-op. Okay, look, cross-by there's no field implementation coming out of the framework. I would argue that there's no co-op in the real world anyway because of problems like these. That makes the negative a prior question. But the second argument you say is committing interpretation. Cool. school. If we prove to you that the negative gets attention whenever you have racist rhetoric in the PMC, then that means that you should still prefer this counterprediction. The third argument you say is our priority. I would argue that it's not our priority. If anything, you've rejected argument not necessarily the team because of the fact that we are questioning the rhetoric coming out of the PMC once again, but also you say fairness education. One, you don't articulate like an impact of like specific fairness education in this round. I would argue that you had perfect fairness in the round, but also we are taking education because of the perfect standard that I highlighted earlier. Also, the next order is reasonability. If we are reasonably topical, and if we prove to you that our standard is inherently good for any reason, you should vote negative on the critique proper. Alternative. First off, every single turn that you're getting is predicated on us going for this critique. Your idea of like the state is good, like the state starting point is always going to be bad because like it's like a method of whiteness. You do not expect that out as a method of like how it's already happening in your method. You're articulating that as though it's like policy implementation that's going to happen in the real world. But more specifically, the next term that you say is like we are not accounting for like all accounts for like different types of like oppression. It doesn't matter because we are accounting for the types of oppression that are in this round. You can cross by the field as illustrate out of the framework here. But the next argument you say is like nihilism. However, the critique is a form of active nihilism. The affirmative is a form of passive nihilism. You're simply doing nothing because field is illustrating. You're just assuming like we should like talk about things and that'll suddenly make it better. No, we never got racist rhetoric out of the PMC, and then we propose an alternative such as like the counterpoint to step away from that rhetoric. We are an active form of nihilism to try to like essentially do nothing in the debate round, but then question the way that we are fabricating different types of impacts in a debate round in and of itself. The next argument that you say is a term because you're you need to like embrace methodology. I would argue that we're not really going for that because you don't really alternative go for all the framework. Our extended across the roll of the ballot, we meet the roll of the ballot whenever it says like app versus neg because we proposed a roll of the ballot and like they didn't really question whether or not they're related to capitalism. They just kind of said like it shouldn't happen. It's competitiveness. Do what?
Can you fly where you're at?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm on framework on the roll of ballot specifically. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. The only impacts, the only impacts you highlight are like intersectivity, but like certain like women of color, like militarism is always going to come about, but you don't articulate any sort of like instances like why that abuses are like why that impact is happening in this round. You're only articulating that for whenever it happens in real IR theory, like real state world policies. I want you to extend across the field as illusory and bad because you say like it's like role playing. However, I would argue that whenever we want to role play as politicians, then we need to role play as what a politician ought to do, not what they were currently doing. Cross by the net benefit of the counterpoint here because we show you why the modern form of politics is bad. On links, you say no link, and you say like turn cat privilege. First off, your cat privilege argument isn't necessarily like warranted because I guess you just like run out of time. I'm sorry for that, but so extend across no link. We're not going. On the case, you say that you say that your methodology is not competitive with the alternative. However, one, we are not going for the critique, but also it is so completely competitive with the counterpoint because of the fact that you were still utilizing racist rhetoric, and now you're justifying with state uses of that to just further suppress the Native American body. That is the impact associated with the counterpoint. But also the second argument you say is that the root cause analysis is going to be bad. One, we are not as okay. They are telling you that not looking like for what like the source of the problem is like. They're telling you like not looking for the source of the problem is a good thing. That is inherently wrong. That's if anything going to lead to the cyclical violence that both teams are now highlighting coming out of all of our speeches because of the fact that the root cause is always going to be necessarily key to trying to solve a problem. The idea of like why the root cause is not inherently bad is why the trust doctrine for Native American tribes ended up doing like generally jack shit for any of those sort of like Native American tribes after the fact that it was just followed by the Trail of Tears because the individual was still viewing that Native American body as someone who is different than us. Thus, we didn't necessarily have to uphold different types of like funding allocations or like different types of like HR regulations that should have happened in the Native American reservations that just completely went ignored. Your idea that the root cause analysis should not be weighed in this round is the cyclical violence that we are highlighting out of the counterpoint. Yeah.
Either way, we're the biggest cause. So
yeah, either way, the negative highlights the biggest cause in a sense of how you are identifying the Native American body as another by labeling them as an Indian and then justifying it by the state has been doing it in the past. The next argument you say though is that the problems are existing in states that are capitalism. I'm not going for that. The next argument that you say that difference is inevitable. It's a question of like how to exactly approach pragmatically. Look, pragmatic approaches are what justify things like the Trail of Tears and Sherman's March of the Sea, in which he would just like essentially blast through any sort of culture that he would then get to. That was the most pragmatic and the strategic approach for him that always led to him like oppressing an individual body, more specifically hurting the individuals that were in this tree. But also whenever you look at the Trail of Tears specifically, it was a necessarily quote-unquote pragmatic approach by the state at that time because they deemed the individual, the Native American body as something that was not necessarily worth as much as the true American at that point. The next argument you say is that the instance of capitalism with I'm not going for that. I like capitalism. You say we don't solve because the Indian person is a legal term. Oh my God, that is the highest instance of supercharging the legal level I have ever heard. Whenever you're justifying the instance of calling them an Indian in the sense of how the state has been utilizing that term for centuries. However, that is the inherent problem whenever you extend across the benefit that Indian has been used to oppress the individual. Especially whenever you look at the specific warrant of that, we're showing you how people, the United States calls the Native American body an Indian person because of the fact that they want to label them as different because they are different than like what exactly an American perceives as a true United States citizen. That is the inherent problem coming out of the counterpoint. You still bite the net benefit, but also on your perm, you say something usually exclusive that is bogus. Extend across the third argument that you cannot separate your rhetoric because their abuse has already happened, and we have to vote on the counterpoint in and of the sense because for the negative because it has already happened. You cannot just simply come up here and apologize for your rhetoric, but then say that you're going to continue to use the Indian term because it's what the state uses. If anything, that's the rhetoric that we have. The second argument that you say is that the link is problematic. That's not necessarily problematic whenever you send across to the Indian person for that term. You say that the state wants to call them something else is the problem we highlight. You say the term Native American is a bad term. No, that's bogus. You're just, again, utilizing different types of state logic to oppress the individual. That's the entire first half of the net benefit.
Okay, so the order is going to be brief float overview. Do I need to talk about Okay, brief float overview, conditionality, PMC, counter plan. So overview, condo, PMC, counter plan. Is anyone not ready? UT Tyler GM wins this debate round for three main reasons. First, I just want you to gut check. Justifying racism because the state recognizes racism is a bad thing to do, right? That probably means that we are going to lead to cyclical racism. It probably means we are going to continue to oppress people that we see as the other. And it most definitely means that we are labeling them as the other and then just saying, it's okay, the state says we should do it. It's a legal term, right? We've outlined several reasons why Native Americans do not like the rhetoric that is coming out of the PMC, and they're not answering those things, right? They're just saying the state says it's okay. It's not okay, especially when these Native Americans are saying that. Also, you're voting for us because you're never going to vote for the perm. They aren't actually answering our perm preempts in there. Also, they're still using the rhetoric, which causes all these bad things to happen. The counterplan does solve because we're literally just correcting what's been done wrong in the PMC, right? What they're doing, the rhetoric that they use is problematic, and if they justify that use just by saying the state likes it, that's even worse. So the PMR is either going to get up and go for conditionality or the perm. That's pretty good analysis on why the perm doesn't work. Let's go to condo now. So on conditionality, remember, we get two conditional advocacies when the PMC uses racist rhetoric. I feel like that's pretty fair, right? Both of our advocacies were a test of what they're saying, right? So like the links on the criticism, we're talking about like the rhetoric that they use in the PMC, and the counterplan is also talking about the rhetoric that they use coming out of the PMC. It's pretty predictable, especially when like this is a very common argument, right? There was no strategy skew happening. Obviously, they got to the criticism with 3 minutes left and got pretty good coverage on it, and like this is just a predictable neg strat like with this resolution. So just extend all of Seth's answers. Remember that there's no strategy skew. Remember that we are key to critical thinking. Because like without this, they're not going to have to think about what is wrong with their rhetoric, right? They're just going to continue to use rhetoric that the state says is okay, which means that they are perpetuating state abuse of anyone who is deemed as the other, which is probably a pretty bad thing. Also, remember to reject the argument not the team, because we are like overly reasonable, right? They knew that this was going to be red coming to this round because of how racist the resolution is. They could have prepped against it. They could have made an affirmative that simply just didn't link, that didn't use this rhetoric or something like that, right? So this is very reasonable. Gut check it. Like you knew this was going to happen. What?
It just comes down to a question of like, we tell you that nothing comes out of this debate. It's just a question of how we're framing the politics in mind.
Yeah, it's a question of how we're framing the politics. So
yeah, that's what justifies the counter-interpretation.
That's what justifies the counter-interpretation. You buy your counter-interpretation because being racist is bad. Gut check it. Okay, go to the PMC. On there, they say that root cause analysis is bad, but remember that it's key to look at the root cause of things, and rhetoric is one of the biggest cause, right? Even if you don't buy that rhetoric itself is the root cause, we are still winning that it is the biggest cause, and we have to like pragmatically target the biggest cause, right? If you want to go for pragmatism, then you should look at what's causing the worst cause of this, right? They say difference is inevitable, but again, remember that they're exploiting that difference by classifying Native Americans as an other and using a term that they've explicitly, like we literally named several tribes in the counterplan that they've explicitly said they do not like, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now go to the counterplan. Remember, they literally just say no solvency because the state says it's okay to be racist. That's not okay. They tell you that there's no reason why they can't perm you both, but remember, we read you how it is functionally competitive because you can't pass it with both labels. Also, they can't sever their rhetoric. So you're voting on the counterclaim because we are solving 100% of the affirmative because there's no net benefit to using the rhetoric of the PMC other than the state says it's okay to call them not Native Americans. So just remember and extend the net benefit. The phrase Indian has historically been used to oppress Native Americans, and it's bad. Sorry, what's that? Started drinking water.
You want to see me water? Tomorrow overview. The conditionality debate, briefly. The framework debate on the criticism. The case debate. And then the counterpoint debate.
Okay, can I get one more time?
Yeah. A few more review on top.
Okay.
The conditionality debate briefly. The framework on the criticism debate. The event and case debate. The counterpoint debate. We good? William Jewell College wins this debate on the permutation. The net benefit being that we acknowledge the legal structures of oppression. That's Caitlin's argument and G-Jeff's argument about how calling people Indians acknowledges the mess-ups of white people, the way that we have been wrong in the past, and that Indian lands is an acknowledgement of the historical oppression. Meanwhile, overdetermining them as Native Americans overrides the history and the diversity that exists in different and various tribal culture. We are a criticism of exactly what you acknowledge. That's the entirety of the PMC's answer to this exact performance. We thought of the argument too. We just wrote an answer to it in the app. Also, you dropped two critical arguments. First, the white strategic investment arguments, terminal low solvency for your arguments, and second, the centralization arguments. Contra debate. First, go ahead and extend the white strategic investment argument. You say that it doesn't matter as long as you go for it. That's not our argument. Our argument is the question of what you can and can't go for. Meaning if Caitlin covered your framework, your pick for 8 minutes, and then didn't cover the cascade, you would go for the cascade, kicking out of this. We say that's our argument. That is only beneficial for us to engage in systems and countering oppression. The app is uniquely capable of solving backhands because I joked, but I was serious. The app is unconditional, meaning that we have the only solvency back for the white strategic investment argument is the unique advantage to the counterplan debate.
The point is that running it conditionally allows them to only defend what is beneficial.
Yeah, the point is running it conditionally allows you to only defend indigenous persons
who are affected by that oppression.
and persons who are affected by oppression. Persons who are affected by the oppression don't have the option to run that, to be conditional about their existence.
You should make clear.
On to the framework. Go ahead and send the counter-interpretation. Not a good response to this. We see that weigh the app versus the negative, the net benefit of militarism. This turns back all of your arguments because you see the debate doesn't need to weigh two arguments and all this, meaning that the way you evaluate this round is by weighing the affirmative through the negative. This is why the permutation wins this debate because it proves that it's not mutually exclusive because we can and function do both. There's not a good link. The only link they have is the text. We don't call. We'll get to that on the net benefit actually. Advantage one. Extend a couple of arguments. First, go ahead and extend that our author keeps slack as an author at cultural survival, uses the language Indian country when talking about gambling rights. We have specific authors that we indict saying that they use this language because they understand the legal system, but also that this chips back all of your arguments next. That's not on the root cause debate. We say that that's not our argument. Our argument is there's no such thing as a root cause, but we must radically engage against every various institution because oppression is like a cage and we must push back beneficially. That's why the neg is not capable of solving the app because it doesn't realize the legal structures that exist to oppress indigenous populations. Next, you say that you said the Trail of Tears was pragmatic. No, that was racist. We'll defend that was racist. Failure to engage in pragmatic discussion of how individuals' lives are actually effective or viewing their lives as conditional is exactly the type of mentality that leads to things like the Trail of Tears. That's the mentality of the LOC and the MO. That is the mentality of violence. We say our pragmatic and unwavering adherence to combat neocolonialism is the best solvency for the debate round. Go ahead and extend our solvency. We can consider arguments about how we are a reversal of the Supreme Court case, California versus the Cabanza Band of Mission Indians. This is the disadvantage to the counterplan and what the counterplan can't solve back of the app because you aren't able to engage in the legalistic framework or alter a court case's terminal low solvency for the counterplan. Counterplan. Your only link on this argument is our Indian country link. We don't call anyone Indians outside of that. You do several times in the MO and LOR, but we refer to them as indigenous populations, which acknowledges the variety and diversity of life. Which are only instances in the legalist framework where we must engage, but we acknowledge that there are problems with it. That's go ahead and extend Galen's number 3 argument, which says that Native American language is bad. This is offense against the counterplan. We say that you essentialize various tribal cultures. This is the various tribal cultures. Caitlin and Jesus' argument is that we acknowledge the problem that has occurred against, the problem to mess up with white folks and colonialism by using the phrase Indian country, because guess what? This isn't India. Columbus found the wrong place. I want you to go ahead and extend that this turns back the entire thing. That benefit means there's no risk to solve back. Next to the permutation, we say the permutation is the only chance to be able to solve back because the permutation is the best chance to solve back because it can simultaneously solve back for the affirmative and solve back for the problems you've isolated because it exposes the double standard that exists in regards to language, is both like whether it's Native American or Indian country. Next, go ahead and accept the no solvency argument. This means you're not able to solve back and you need reason for the effort. Yeah, so you can't solve because your app happens, we win that on the framework debate, or your counterpunt happens. Then, when the USFG does something, but does it to Native American territories, that doesn't refer to any legal territory. That's why current Indigenous scholars use the phrase Indian country, because they need to reverse systems of oppression. That's why the affirmative is able to solve, where the permutation is able to solve, and the negative is not. Because Indian country refers to a very real legal construct that is temporal and only exists as a result of various forms of oppression. We say that we are able to solve back for that by acknowledging it through either the perm or the act itself. We say you cannot solve back for that because you don't engage in it, you don't change the court case, you don't actually solve back for the gambling. We say this in this unique instance of neocolonialism, that the act is able to solve back, an acknowledgement of history that the negative cannot do. I'm going to go to the bathroom, that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.